January 5th, 1757. Versailles. It is just after 6 in the evening. Darkness has already settled over the palace grounds. Winter air cuts through covered passageways. They connect the north parterre to the royal courtyard. Robert-François Damiens is waiting. He is a domestic servant from Artois, 41 years old, poor, politically unimportant. He has no plan, no organization, no escape route, only a small knife. He believes the king must be confronted. From hiding, Damiens sees Louis XV emerge. The king is surrounded by attendants and armed guards. Nothing appears vulnerable. This moment is routine, rehearsed, predictable. Damiens steps forward. He forces between the guards and strikes the king with the knife. The blade enters the king's side between the 4th and 5th ribs. Blood spills immediately. Louis cries out. Guards react within seconds. Damiens is thrown to the ground and restrained. Panic spreads through Versailles. The king has been stabbed inside his palace under his own guards' protection. He is rushed to his chambers, believing he is dying. A priest is summoned. Louis confesses his sins and apologizes to Queen Marie for infidelities. He entrusts the future of the kingdom to the Dauphin. Doctors examine the wound. The verdict is unexpected. The injury is shallow, painful, but not fatal. No vital organs were struck. Louis XV will survive. Relief sweeps the court. The assassination attempt has failed. The crisis appears contained. But this moment marks something else. The king has been physically touched. The body of the monarchy has been breached. Symbolism matters more than blood. For Louis XV, the danger is not the wound. It is the implication. For Robert-François Damiens, the king's survival guarantees no mercy will come. It guarantees that an example will be made. Louis XV does not die. What appeared in the first moments to be a fatal wound is quickly reclassified by the king's physicians. The blade did not penetrate deeply. No vital organs were struck. The bleeding stops. The danger passes. The king will recover. The atmosphere inside Versailles shifts almost instantly from panic to relief. Courtiers who feared collapse return to calculation as order appears restored. The assassination attempt has failed. Order, it seems, has been restored. But this reversal creates a problem. If the king had died, the narrative would have been simple. A martyr king, a clear enemy, swift and decisive punishment justified. Instead, Louis lives. The wound is real, but the threat is symbolic. The king is struck without being removed. Authority challenged, not overthrown. In an absolute monarchy, this is the most dangerous outcome possible. Louis XV understands this clearly. He knows the attack cannot be treated as an ordinary crime. It cannot be minimized, forgiven, or quietly absorbed by the system. Survival magnifies the offense. An attack on the king is an attack on the state. If unanswered, it sets a precedent others might follow. The survival of Louis XV removes one option entirely: mercy. The question is no longer whether Damiens deserves punishment, but how extreme it must be. Robert-François Damiens is not a revolutionary leader. He is born in 1715 near Arras, into poverty with little formal education. As a young man, he serves briefly in the army, then drifts through domestic jobs in Paris. He is unstable, frequently dismissed, known for erratic behavior. At one point, he is nicknamed Robert le Diable, Robert the Devil. Damiens works for Jesuit institutions, then for members of the French Parliament. In both places, he listens and overhears arguments about religion and authority. He absorbs ideas about injustice and monarchy without fully understanding them. This matters. Damiens develops no coherent political program and belongs to no faction. He has no allies. No escape plan, no strategy beyond the act itself. Under interrogation, his explanations shift repeatedly. Sometimes he speaks of religion and Jesuit persecution. At other moments, he complains of poverty and suffering in France. He insists he meant only to touch the king, not kill him. He claims he wanted to force Louis XV to rule more justly. This claim is almost certainly false. He brought a knife. He aimed for the king's chest. He struck with force. The deeper truth is more revealing than the lie. Damiens misunderstands the system he attacks. He believes the king can be corrected and morally redirected. He imagines monarchy as personal, not structural. This naivete seals his fate. Absolutist power interprets symbolic acts existentially, not symbolically. Damiens is confused, inconsistent, politically insignificant, yet more dangerous. If a man like this reaches the king, the system is exposed. Systems respond to exposure not with reform, but with annihilation. The French state has seen this before. In 1610, Francois Ravaillac stabbed King Henry IV to death in Paris. The response was absolute. Ravaillac was burned, mutilated, and torn apart by horses. His execution was meant not to punish a man, but to terrify a society. That memory still governs royal thinking in 1757. An attack on the king is not a crime against a person. It is defined as regicide even when the king survives. Legal distinctions do not matter. Symbolic ones do. The monarch's body represents the body of the state. To strike it is to deny the legitimacy of the entire system. This is why attempted assassination cannot be answered proportionally. Proportionality would imply the monarchy can absorb damage. It cannot. Louis XV's advisors understand the danger immediately. If a poor servant can reach the king, distance has collapsed. If uncorrected, imitation will follow. The punishment must achieve 3 goals simultaneously. First, it must erase sympathy for the attacker. Second, it must restore fear. Third, it must reassert the king's sacred status. None of these goals can be achieved quietly. A swift execution would be insufficient. A humane death, disastrous. The act must be slow, public, and unforgettable. Pain is not incidental. It is the message. This logic comes not from cruelty, but from insecurity. Absolute power relies on the belief it is untouchable. Once shaken, only spectacle can restore belief, or so the authorities believe. They are wrong. Before execution, there must be interrogation. From January through March of 1757, Damiens is tortured repeatedly. The purpose is not to determine guilt. That is already established. The purpose is to discover accomplices. There are none. Damiens is restrained, stretched, and beaten by common 18th century methods. Water is forced down his throat to simulate drowning. His body becomes evidence, marked by pain rather than testimony. Despite this, he provides no names. This frustrates authorities, not because they doubt guilt. It frustrates them, because the narrative requires a conspiracy. Lone actors are unsettling. They imply systemic weakness. The interrogations continue anyway. Torture no longer serves investigation. It becomes ritual. Each session follows procedure while producing nothing new. The outcome is predetermined. Performance is what matters. Judges eventually accept Damiens acted alone. This changes nothing, because punishment is already decided. Legal language is adjusted to fit the problem. Damiens is convicted of a most atrocious and abominable parricidal crime. Precision is unnecessary. Severity is essential. By sentencing, the process has fully inverted. The state is no longer seeking truth. It is preparing a demonstration. The trial does not lead to execution. Execution shaped the trial. The execution has shaped the trial from the start. March 28, 1757, Paris, Place de Grève. Damiens is brought from his cell at dawn, stripped naked, placed on a cart. His body is broken from months of interrogation. He cannot stand. Later images of a defiant man walking upright are fictional. The reality is humiliation, weakness, and exposure. The sentence unfolds in stages to mark the crime before destroying the body. First, Damiens is brought to the scaffold and offered one last chance. His legs are crushed in brodequins until bones splinter. He gives no names, because there are none. He is forced to hold the knife used in the attack. Molten sulfur is poured onto his hand to burn the weapon's outline. The flame burns weakly. The damage is superficial. The crowd waits. The executioner uses steel pincers to tear flesh. Flesh is torn from calf, thigh, arm, and chest. The process is slow, clumsy, and ineffective. This is not the clean terror authorities imagined. Boiling lead, oil, resin, wax, and sulfur are poured into wounds. Damiens cries out, begging for mercy and calling on Christ. Witnesses note he does not curse God or the king. Finally, ropes are tied to his limbs and horses are harnessed. This punishment for regicides had not been used for over a century. The horses pull. Nothing happens. Minutes pass, joints twist, but the body holds. More horses are added, directions change, limbs still resist. The spectacle becomes awkward, prolonged, embarrassing. The executioner cuts tendons and joints with a knife. One by one, the limbs come away. Damiens is still alive. Witnesses see jaw movement after dismemberment. His torso and limbs are burned. The fire lasts for hours. The execution ends not with awe, but exhaustion. This was meant to restore fear. Instead, it produced revulsion. Public executions were not unusual in 18th century France. Violence was familiar. Spectacle was expected. But what happened at Place de Grève exceeded those expectations. Even the elites recoiled. Many rented rooms overlooking the square to watch from above. They did not stay. Witnesses described faces turned away and ears blocked. People retreat from windows as the spectacle continues. The suffering lasted too long. The mechanics failed. The performance lost control. Giacomo Casanova later recalled the screams were unbearable. Others reported disgust at the state, not sympathy for Damiens. This distinction matters. The crowd does not rally around Damiens as a hero. He is not celebrated or mourned as a martyr, but neither is the monarchy strengthened. What the public witnesses is not justice, but excess. Not authority, but desperation. The ritual meant to affirm order exposes fragility instead. The message is received, but not as intended. Rather than loyalty, the execution confirms rule by fear. The monarchy no longer commands moral authority. The spectacle does not silence doubt. It amplifies it. Louis XV intended the execution of Robert-François Damiens to be a warning. It was meant to demonstrate absolute authority and overwhelming force. Touching the king was meant to mean annihilation. The effect was the opposite. The punishment projected excess, not strength. The monarchy appeared archaic, not sacred. The king resembled a tyrant from antiquity, not a modern ruler. This mattered. France in 1757 was already changing. Enlightenment ideas spread among lawyers, writers, merchants, and magistrates. Justice, proportionality, and reason gained influence. Authority was expected to justify itself. The execution of Damiens failed that test. It widened the moral distance between ruler and ruled. One man's suffering symbolized domination, not governance. Louis XV survived the attack on his body. He did not survive the attack on his legitimacy. His reign became associated with luxury, poverty, and detachment. The monarchy no longer represented the nation. The execution did not cause the French Revolution. It made revolution conceivable. Terror was chosen over restraint. Absolute power answered challenge with brutality. Brutality was no longer convincing. The death of Robert-François Damiens did not fade into obscurity. It entered theory. In 1764, Cesare Beccaria published On Crimes and Punishments. He argued torture and spectacle did not prevent crime but corrupted society. Justice should rely on certainty, not severity. Damiens became an example of what not to do. In 1776, Thomas Paine referenced the execution in Common Sense. He warned governments ruling by terror destroy moral fabric. Violent punishment teaches cruelty, not obedience. These arguments were grounded in memory, not abstraction. The most influential interpretation came much later. In 1975, Michel Foucault opened Discipline and Punish with Damiens' execution. He used it to show a turning point in the history of power. The spectacle marked the end of one system and the start of another. Public torture was inefficient, producing sympathy and resistance. Modern power became invisible, continuous, and internalized. Punishment moved from the body into institutions. Control relied on routine, discipline, and normalization. This shift did not make power humane. It made power efficient. Damiens was not a hero or a revolutionary. He did not change the world by intention. But how the state destroyed him revealed hidden truths. The age of public terror was ending because it no longer worked. The execution of Robert-François Damiens was intended to end a threat. Instead, it exposed one. The monarchy believed power endured through visible punishment and unforgettable pain. Fear reinforced obedience, and spectacle reinforced hierarchy for centuries. But by 1757, the world had shifted. The execution was not too cruel. It was too revealing. The state revealed its dependence on violence to sustain authority. That dependence signaled weakness. Damiens' death did not inspire revolution or immediate rebellion. Its effect was subtle, widening the gap between authority and legitimacy. It confirmed the monarchy ruled through force, not reason. This realization did not disappear. It lingered in legal debates and philosophical arguments. It fueled belief that power must be restrained and justified. The French Revolution did not revive the scaffold out of tradition. It did so out of desperation. The guillotine was faster, cleaner, more rational, yet served the same purpose. It made power visible again. Even that solution would eventually fail. Punishment alone cannot sustain authority. Modern states learned this lesson well. They regulate behavior quietly and discipline rather than destroy. Compliance is sought without spectacle. This is not moral progress, but progress in control. Damiens is remembered for what his death revealed. When power feels threatened, it reveals its true shape. Once seen, it cannot be unseen.